My name is Sister Maria Francesca Benedini. I am 58 years old, and what I'm about to tell you today will destroy everything you thought you knew about death. For 18 years, I have carried 3 secrets that a dying boy whispered to me in his final 3 minutes of life. Secrets so profound about what happens when we die that they've haunted me every single day since October 12th, 2006. That dying boy was Carlo Acutis, the 15-year-old Italian teenager who would become blessed by the Catholic Church 14 years later. But I knew him before the world knew his name. I was the last person to speak with him before he crossed into eternity, and the 3 revelations he shared with me in those final moments have tormented and transformed me in ways I never imagined possible. I will never forget that morning at 6:42 a.m. when the monitors began indicating Carlo was entering his final moments. His parents were in the hallway speaking with the doctor, and I was alone with this remarkable young man who had spent his brief life documenting Eucharistic miracles with his passion for programming and computer technology. For 34 years, I had worked as an oncology nurse at San Gerardo Hospital in Monza, witnessing over 0 deaths. I thought I understood everything about dying. I was completely wrong. When Carlo opened his eyes that had been glazed over for hours, and looked at me with supernatural clarity, I felt my entire understanding of medicine, death, and eternity crumble in an instant. His voice, which had become a weak whisper throughout the night, emerged crystal clear. Sister Maria, I need to tell you 3 secrets about what happens when we die. Jesus wants you to keep this until the right moment to reveal it. I thought it was terminal delirium. Every dying patient experiences confusion in their final hours, but Carlo's lucidity was absolute, his gaze piercing, and what he told me next would haunt me for the next 18 years, until a desperate phone call on September 15th, 2024, made me understand why God had chosen me to receive this impossible knowledge. The first secret he revealed challenged everything I had learned about the dying process. The second secret destroyed my scientific understanding of death itself. And the third secret made me question whether I was speaking with a dying boy or an angel preparing to return home. But this story isn't just about those 3 minutes that changed my life forever. It's about how Carlo Acutis, who died at age 15 from fulminant leukemia on October 12, 2006, and was beatified in Assisi on October 10, 2020, continues to orchestrate miracles from heaven, using those secrets he shared with me to bring hope to families drowning in despair. Because 18 years later, I finally understood why he chose me, why he trusted an ordinary oncology nurse with knowledge that defies medical science, and why those 3 minutes of revelation were not his goodbye to this world, but his first assignment as an intercessor in eternity. What happened next will challenge everything you believe about death, prove that love transcends the grave, and show you how a boy who dedicated his life to documenting miracles with his computer skills continues to orchestrate impossible encounters from paradise itself. This is my testimony, documented with medical precision, witnessed by colleagues, and verified by a transformation so complete that it took me 18 years to find the courage to share it with the world. My journey to that life-altering moment began decades before I ever heard the name, Carlo Acutis. I was born Maria Francesca Benedini in 1966 in a small village outside Milan, the daughter of a factory worker and a seamstress who raised 6 children with unwavering Catholic faith. My childhood was simple but profound. Daily Mass, evening rosaries, and an unshakable belief that God had a specific plan for each of us. At 18, I felt called to religious life and entered the Sisters of Mercy convent in Bergamo. But unlike many of my sisters who were drawn to teaching or pastoral care, I felt inexplicably drawn to medical care. God needs hands that heal, for our Mother Superior told me, and so I pursued nursing with the same dedication I brought to prayer. By 1990, at age 24, I had completed my nursing degree and specialized in oncology. The choice wasn't easy. Watching children die requires a strength that only comes from somewhere beyond yourself. But I believed then, as I believe now, that being present for someone's final moments is one of the most sacred callings on earth. For 16 years before Carlo's arrival, I worked exclusively in pediatric oncology at San Gerardo Hospital. I developed a reputation among families for my gentle bedside manner and my ability to bring peace to chaotic situations. Colleagues often requested me for the most difficult cases, not because I was the most skilled technically, but because somehow my presence seemed to make unbearable situations slightly more bearable. I had seen everything. 7-year-olds with brain tumors who asked me if heaven had video games. Teenage girls who worried more about losing their hair than losing their lives. Parents who collapsed in hallways when hope finally ran out. After 16 years, I thought my heart had developed the necessary calluses to survive the constant exposure to death. But I had never encountered anyone like Carlo Acutis. He arrived at our hospital on October 6th, 2006, a Saturday morning that seemed ordinary, until the moment his family walked through our doors. Carlo was 15 years old, born in London on May 3rd, 1991, but raised in Milan from infancy when his family relocated to Italy. He had been experiencing fatigue and flu-like symptoms for several days when blood work revealed the devastating truth: acute lymphoblastic leukemia in an advanced, aggressive form. What struck me immediately wasn't the typical despair I saw in teenage patients. Carlo walked into our unit wearing his characteristic sneakers and jeans, carrying a small crucifix and a worn prayer book. While his parents, Andrea and Antonia Acutis, spoke with Dr. Lombardi about treatment options, Carlo sat quietly in the waiting room, not scrolling through a phone like most teenagers, but praying silently with an intensity I had rarely witnessed in adults. When I introduced myself as his primary nurse for the evening shift, Carlo looked up with the most extraordinary smile. "Sister Maria," he said, somehow already knowing I was a religious sister, despite wearing standard medical scrubs. "I've been praying for this illness. I offered it to Jesus last month for the salvation of souls. I think he accepted my offer." In 16 years of pediatric oncology, no child had ever told me they had prayed for their own terminal diagnosis. During the intake process, I learned more about this remarkable young man. Carlo had been extraordinarily devoted to the Eucharist since childhood, attending daily Mass whenever possible. His passion for computer programming and web design wasn't typical teenage obsession. He had spent countless hours creating an online exhibition, documenting Eucharistic miracles from around the world, believing that technology should serve to glorify God. His mother Antonia explained that Carlo often spent entire afternoons researching and cataloging supernatural phenomena, not with adolescent fascination for the paranormal, but with the scholarly dedication of someone building an archive of divine intervention. He always said that if God performs miracles, someone needs to document them properly, she told me through tears. The next 3 days challenged everything I thought I knew about teenage patients. While other young people in similar circumstances became angry, depressed, or withdrawn, Carlo seemed to grow more luminous with each passing hour. He spoke about his illness not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity to unite his suffering with Christ's passion. "Sister Maria," he told me on October 9th as I administered his evening medications, Do you know what the difference is between a computer program and a prayer? I shook my head. A computer program does exactly what you tell it to do. A prayer asks God to do what He knows is best. I'm programming my suffering to glorify Him, but I'm praying for His will to be done. His parents maintained constant vigil, but Carlo insisted they go home each evening to rest. I'm not alone, he would tell them. Jesus is here with me in the Eucharist. Indeed, our hospital chapel was only 50 meters from his room, and Carlo often asked me to wheel him there during treatment breaks so he could spend time in Eucharistic adoration. Dr. Elena Rossi, our head of pediatric oncology, had seen thousands of cases during her 25-year career. After examining Carlo's latest blood work on October 10th, she pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. Maria, I've never seen leukemia progress this aggressively. We're looking at days, not weeks. But I've also never seen a patient this young maintain such peace in the face of death. What is it about this boy? I couldn't explain it either. Carlo never complained about pain, though his medical chart indicated he should have been experiencing significant discomfort. He never expressed fear about dying, though he was mature enough to understand his prognosis. Most remarkably, his presence seemed to bring supernatural calm to our entire unit. Other families began requesting to visit Carlo's room. Parents of our other pediatric patients found that speaking with him gave them strength they hadn't possessed before. One father told me, "After talking with Carlo for 20 minutes, I understood for the first time that my daughter's cancer wasn't God punishing us. It was God trusting us with something sacred." But it was the night of October 11th that everything changed. Carlo had experienced a significant downturn around 11:30 p.m. His breathing became labored, his temperature spiked, and all indicators suggested he was entering his final hours. I called his parents and Father Giuseppe, our hospital chaplain, knowing that our time was limited. Throughout my career, I had developed an intuition about death. I could usually predict within hours when a patient was approaching their final moments. But with Carlo, something felt different. The typical heaviness that accompanies approaching death wasn't present. Instead, the room felt filled with an otherworldly peace that I couldn't explain medically. Around 2:00 a.m., Carlo's parents stepped into the hallway to speak with Dr. Rossi about final arrangements. Father Giuseppe had administered last rites an hour earlier and was now in the chapel praying. For the first time in days, I was alone with Carlo in room 307. His breathing was shallow but steady. His complexion had taken on the pallor I recognized in final stage patients. But his hands remained surprisingly warm, and occasionally, despite being largely unconscious, he would whisper names I didn't recognize. Nonno Giuseppe, Nonna Anna, Francesco. Later, I would learn these were his grandparents and uncle, who had died years before his birth. At 6:42 a.m., the monitors began indicating Carlo's vital signs were failing. His parents were still speaking with the medical team in the hallway. The morning shift wouldn't arrive for another hour. In that moment, I instinctively reached for Carlo's right hand, as I had done with hundreds of patients in their final moments. His hand was unusually warm for someone so close to death. And then, something happened that challenged everything I believed about medicine, dying, and the nature of consciousness itself. Carlo's eyes opened. "And if this channel has been an answer for you, consider leaving a super thanks. This financial help, however small it may seem, sustains this mission and allows us to continue bringing deep and transformative content to more lives that need this word." Carlo's eyes had been glazed and unfocused for hours, the typical appearance of someone transitioning between consciousness and eternity. But when they opened at 6:42 a.m., they were clear, penetrating, and filled with a supernatural awareness that defied his medical condition. He turned his head toward me with deliberate movement that shouldn't have been possible, given his neurological state over the previous 6 hours. "Sister Maria," he said, and I nearly dropped his hand in shock. His voice was crystal clear, strong, and carried an authority that seemed to come from somewhere far beyond his 15-year-old frame. There was no confusion, no disorientation, no signs of the delirium I had witnessed in countless dying patients. I checked the monitors. His vital signs indicated he should have been barely conscious, yet he was speaking with perfect clarity. "Carlo," I whispered. "How are you feeling?" He smiled. Not the weak smile of someone approaching death, but a radiant expression that seemed to illuminate the entire room. "Sister, I need to tell you 3 secrets about what happens when we die. Jesus wants you to keep this until the right moment to reveal it." My medical training kicked in immediately. Terminal patients often experience moments of apparent lucidity before death, commonly called terminal lucidity, or the rally. I had seen it dozens of times. Patients who seemed to improve dramatically in their final hours, often becoming talkative and alert before declining rapidly. But this felt entirely different. Carlo's gaze was unwavering. His breathing had actually stabilized, and most remarkably, his hand in mine felt not just warm, but almost electric with life. "Sister," he continued, "what I'm about to share with you isn't delirium or imagination. In a few minutes, I'll be with Jesus. But before I go, he wants me to give you these truths to carry until someone desperately needs to hear them." Despite my rational mind screaming that this was impossible, every instinct I had developed in 16 years of nursing told me that something supernatural was occurring. The room itself felt different, charged with presence I couldn't explain. The typical heaviness that accompanies death had been replaced by an almost festive anticipation. "The first secret," Carlo said, his voice taking on a quality that seemed to echo from somewhere beyond the room itself, "is about what happens in the final 3 minutes before death. Sister, the soul doesn't experience judgment or fear. Instead, it sees its entire life like a movie of love, where God shows how he was present in every moment, especially the most difficult ones." He paused, and his eyes seemed to focus on something I couldn't see. "Right now, I can see my whole life, my first communion when I was 7, and felt Jesus enter my heart. The day I learned to program and realized I could use technology to glorify God. Even the morning I got sick and offered this illness for souls who don't know Jesus yet. Every moment was orchestrated by love, sister. Every single moment." I found myself crying, though I couldn't explain why. In my years of caring for dying patients, none had ever described the dying process with such clarity and peace. "Carlo," I whispered, "what else do you see?" "The second secret," he continued, and now his voice carried harmonics that seemed impossible from human vocal cords, "is that when the soul leaves the body, there's no pain or fear, only immense relief, like someone taking off heavy clothes after a very long day. Death isn't punishment, sister. It's liberation. The body was just a beautiful prison that served its purpose." As he spoke, I could swear the room was filling with light that didn't come from any medical equipment or window. It was soft, golden, and seemed to emanate from Carlo himself. I blinked several times, thinking my exhaustion was causing hallucinations, but the light remained consistent and undeniable. "I can feel it already," Carlo said, his smile growing even more radiant. The heaviness is lifting. My soul is getting ready to fly. Oh, Sister Maria, if you could feel what I'm feeling right now, such peace, such incredible peace. And the third secret? I asked, though my voice was barely audible. Carlo's expression changed to one of pure joy, like someone seeing beloved friends after a long separation. The third secret is the most beautiful one, sister. When we arrive in heaven, we don't meet Jesus or Mary first. We meet all the people we loved who went before us. They receive us like a great homecoming party. His eyes widened with wonder. Sister, I can see them now. Nonno Giuseppe is here. He's laughing and crying at the same time. Nonna Anna is wearing that blue dress she loved so much. And Francesco, Uncle Francesco who died before I was born. He's here too, sister. They're all here, waiting for me. I felt my rational mind struggling to process what I was witnessing. Carlo was describing people who had died before his birth, yet speaking about them with intimate familiarity. More impossibly, he seemed to be seeing them in real time, carrying on what appeared to be a conversation I couldn't hear. Sister Maria, Carlo said, turning his full attention back to me with supernatural intensity. Listen carefully to what I tell you next. This is why Jesus chose you to hear these secrets. Someday, and you'll know exactly when, you'll meet a family that has lost a young son, like me. They'll be in complete despair, convinced that God has abandoned them. Their faith will be destroyed by grief. He gripped my hand with strength that should have been medically impossible given his condition. On that day, you must tell them these 3 secrets. They'll need to know that their son experienced no fear in his final moments, that leaving his body was relief and not suffering, and that he was welcomed by everyone who loved him, who had died before. But Carlo, I protested, how will I know which family? When will this happen? His smile became somehow both childlike and ancient. Sister, you'll know. Their pain will be so deep that your heart will recognize it immediately. And when you share these secrets, you'll watch God use them to transform despair into hope, just like He's using my death to bring glory to His name. The monitors around us began beeping more rapidly, but Carlo showed no signs of distress. In fact, he appeared to be growing more luminous with each passing second. Sister, I have one more thing to tell you. After I die, don't grieve for me. What you're witnessing isn't tragedy, it's triumph. I've completed the mission God gave me on earth. The website about Eucharistic miracles, the love I've shared, the offering of my illness. All of it was preparation for this moment. But you're so young, I whispered. You have so much life ahead of you. Carlo's laugh was pure music. Sister, I'm not losing life. I'm gaining real life. This body served its purpose perfectly. It allowed me to love God, love my family, and show others that young people can be saints too. Now it's time for the next adventure. As he spoke, I became aware that we weren't alone in the room. Though I couldn't see anyone else, I felt multiple presences surrounding Carlo's bed. Gentle, protective, filled with love. The air seemed to shimmer with movement I couldn't quite perceive directly. They're here to help me transition, Carlo explained, apparently seeing my confusion. Sister, dying isn't traveling alone into the unknown. It's being escorted home by family. In those final moments, Carlo began speaking in what sounded like multiple voices, his own young voice mixed with others I couldn't identify. Nonno Giuseppe says thank you for taking such good care of me. Nonna Anna wants you to know that your kindness to dying children is a prayer that reaches heaven immediately. And Uncle Francesco, he says your own family members who have died are proud of the mercy you show to families like ours. I was sobbing now, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of privilege. I was witnessing something sacred, something that defied medical explanation, but filled my soul with certainty that consciousness transcends physical death. "Sister Maria," Carlo said, his voice now carrying echoes of eternity, "promise me you'll carry these secrets until someone desperately needs them. Promise me you'll trust God's timing, and promise me you'll never doubt that what happened here today was real." "I promise," I whispered. Carlo's eyes focused on mine one final time. "Good. Now watch something beautiful happen. Watch how peacefully someone can leave this world when they're going home." At exactly 6:45 a.m., Carlo Acutis closed his eyes, smiled the most serene smile I had ever witnessed, and exhaled softly. The monitors showed his heart stopping, but the room remained filled with that supernatural peace. Even in death, his face radiated joy. I sat holding his hand for another 10 minutes, afraid to move, afraid to break the sacred atmosphere that surrounded us. When his parents and the medical team returned, I struggled to find words to describe what had happened. How do you explain that you've just witnessed, not death, but graduation? How do you tell grieving parents that their son's final moments weren't tragedy but triumph? How do you document in medical records that a dying teenager shared secrets about eternity that challenged everything you thought you knew about consciousness and death? I chose to keep Carlo's secrets exactly as he had requested. But those 3 revelations would haunt me for the next 18 years, changing how I approached every subsequent death I witnessed, and preparing me for a moment I couldn't yet imagine, when God would show me exactly why he had chosen me to receive such impossible knowledge. For 18 years I carried Carlo's secrets like sacred relics, locked in my heart. The memory of that supernatural encounter never faded. If anything, it grew more vivid with time. Every detail remained crystal clear. The impossible clarity in his eyes, the warmth of his hand, the light that filled the room, and most of all, those 3 profound revelations about death that challenged everything I thought I understood about dying. Carlo was beatified on October 10th, 2020, exactly 14 years after his death. I watched the ceremony from Assisi via live stream, tears streaming down my face as I witnessed the Catholic Church officially recognize the sanctity I had experienced firsthand in room 307. But even then I said nothing about our final conversation. Carlo had been specific. I was to wait for the right moment, for a family in desperate need. I continued working as an oncology nurse at San Gerardo Hospital, but something had fundamentally changed in how I approached death. Other nurses began commenting that families seemed calmer when I was present during final moments. "There's something different about you with dying patients," my colleague Sister Beatrice observed. "It's like you know something the rest of us don't." I did know something. I knew that death wasn't the tragedy we believed it to be. I knew that consciousness transcended physical expiration. And I knew that somewhere in eternity, Carlo Acutis was orchestrating encounters that would prove these truths to others who needed them desperately. During those 18 years, I witnessed 847 more deaths. Each time I watched for signs of the peace Carlo had described. While not every patient experienced the same supernatural clarity he had demonstrated, I began noticing patterns that medical literature couldn't explain. Terminal patients often whispered to people who weren't visible to the rest of us. Many described feeling welcomed by deceased relatives. Almost universally, those who spoke about their dying process described relief rather than fear. But I never shared Carlo's specific secrets with anyone. Even when families begged me for comfort in their darkest moments, I held my silence. Something deep in my spirit told me that the right moment hadn't arrived yet, that God was preparing someone specific to receive this revelation. That moment finally came on September 15th, 2024. I was finishing my afternoon shift when my former colleague, Sister Margarita, called from Niguarda Hospital. Her voice was thick with despair. "Maria, I need your help. We have a family here that's beyond anything I've seen in 30 years of nursing. They lost their 14-year-old son to acute lymphoblastic leukemia yesterday morning, the same type that took Carlo Acutis." My blood ran cold. After all these years, the details were too specific to be coincidence. "The parents, Dr. Alessandro and Signora Claudia Rossi, are in complete psychological breakdown," she continued. "They've declared war against God. Dr. Rossi, he's a cardiovascular surgeon here, has been screaming in the chapel that he'll never set foot in a church again. Signora Rossi hasn't eaten or slept since Matteo died. She sits in his room talking to him, convinced he's suffering somewhere alone." As Sister Margarita spoke, every detail of that morning 18 years ago came flooding back with supernatural clarity. I could hear Carlo's voice as clearly as if he were standing beside me. "Someday, you'll meet a family that has lost a young son like me. They'll be in complete despair, convinced that God has abandoned them. Maria, they're threatening suicide," Sister Margarita continued. "Both of them. They keep saying that if God could let an innocent child suffer and die, then existence is meaningless. We've tried everything. Chaplains, grief counselors, family members. Nothing reaches them. I thought maybe someone who's seen as many deaths as you have might know what to say." I closed my eyes and felt Carlo's presence as strongly as I had that morning in 2006. After 18 years of waiting, the moment had arrived. "I'll be there in 2 hours," I told Sister Margarita. The drive to Niguarda Hospital felt surreal. As I traveled the familiar roads between the two medical centers, I prayed constantly, asking God to give me the right words and the courage to share secrets I had guarded for nearly 2 decades. When I arrived at the pediatric unit, the atmosphere was suffocating with grief. Other families in the waiting area spoke in hushed tones about the couple in room 412 whose son had died the day before. "They haven't stopped crying since yesterday," one father whispered to his wife. "The sound is heartbreaking." Sister Margarita met me at the nurses' station. "They're exactly as I described, Maria. Maybe worse. Dr. Rossi hasn't left his son's room except to rage at God in the chapel. Signora Rossi keeps asking why Matteo had to die alone, why God didn't protect him, if he's afraid somewhere in the darkness." She led me down the hallway to room 412. Through the partially open door, I could see Dr. Alessandro Rossi sitting in the chair where his son had died, staring at the empty bed with hollow eyes. Signora Claudia was pacing frantically, clutching a small teddy bear and speaking rapidly to the air as if addressing an invisible presence. "Matteo, baby, are you alone? Are you scared? Mama is so sorry she wasn't holding your hand when you died. Are you looking for us? Are you lost somewhere in the dark?" The raw anguish in her voice shattered my heart. This was exactly what Carlo had prepared me for. Parents drowning in despair because they believed their child's death meant abandonment and suffering. I knocked gently and entered the room. "Dr. and Signora Rossi, my name is Sister Maria Francesca Benedini. I'm a nurse from San Gerardo Hospital. I've worked in pediatric oncology for 34 years. Dr. Rossi looked up with red-rimmed eyes full of rage. "Another nurse with platitudes about God's plan? Save it, sister. I've seen enough suffering to know there's no loving God watching over children. If there was, my Matteo would still be alive." Actually, I said softly, sitting in the chair beside him, I'm here because of something a dying boy told me 18 years ago. Something he made me promise to share with parents who lost a son like him. Signora Claudia stopped pacing and turned toward me with desperate attention. What boy? What did he tell you? I took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would either transform their devastating grief or confirm their loss of faith. His name was Carlo Acutis. He died at my hospital on October 12th, 2006, when he was 15 years old, also from acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The mention of Carlo's name seemed to electrify the room. Both parents moved closer, sensing somehow that I wasn't offering standard comfort, but sharing something unprecedented. In his final 3 minutes of life, I continued, Carlo told me 3 secrets about what happens when children like Matteo die. He made me promise to keep them until I met parents in exactly your situation. Parents convinced their child died alone and afraid. Dr. Rossi's expression shifted from rage to desperate curiosity. What secrets? What did he tell you? I looked directly into their broken eyes and shared Carlo's first revelation. He said that in the final 3 minutes before death, the soul doesn't experience judgment or fear. Instead, it sees its entire life like a movie of love, where God shows how he was present in every moment, especially the most difficult ones. Matteo didn't die in pain or terror. He died seeing every moment of love that surrounded his life. Signora Claudia collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. But how can you know that? How can you be certain? Because, I continued, Carlo told me the second secret. When the soul leaves the body, there's no suffering, only immense relief, like someone taking off heavy clothes after a very long day. Death isn't punishment. It's liberation. Matteo felt relief, not agony, when he left his body. Dr. Rossi, who had declared war against God 48 hours earlier, was now crying. I've tortured myself wondering if he suffered when I wasn't there to help him. If what you're saying is true. The third secret, I said, my voice filled with the same conviction I had felt 18 years earlier, is the most beautiful. When children like Matteo arrive in heaven, they don't meet Jesus or Mary first. They meet all the family members who died before them. They're welcomed like a great homecoming party. Matteo isn't alone, Signora Claudia. He's with everyone who loved him who went before. The transformation was immediate and profound. Signora Claudia's frantic pacing stopped entirely. My parents... They died when Matteo was little, but he always talked about them like he knew them. He's with them now, I assured her. And with your grandparents, Dr. Rossi. With everyone who ever loved him who crossed over before him. Dr. Rossi looked up with wonder replacing despair. Sister, how do you know these things? How can you be so certain? I told them about that supernatural morning in room 307. About Carlo's impossible lucidity in his final moments, about the secrets he had entrusted to me, specifically for parents like them. I described the peace that filled the room, the light I couldn't medically explain, and most importantly, Carlo's promise that someday I would meet a family in desperate need of this truth. Over the next 4 hours, I watched God use Carlo's secrets to rebuild faith that grief had demolished. Dr. Rossi, who had sworn never to enter a church again, asked if we could go to the chapel to pray for Matteo. Signora Claudia, who hadn't eaten in 48 hours, suddenly felt hungry for the first time since her son's death. Sister Maria, Dr. Rossi said as we prepared to leave the chapel, if what Carlo told you is true, and something in my heart knows it is, then Matteo's death wasn't meaningless suffering. It was. What's the word? Graduation. Exactly what Carlo called it, I confirmed. Graduation to real life. 6 months later, the transformation continues. Dr. Alessandro and Signora Claudia have become volunteers at Niguarda's pediatric oncology unit, offering comfort to families facing the same crisis they survived. They share Carlo's secrets with parents drowning in similar despair, creating a chain of hope that extends from that supernatural moment in 2006 to families all across Milan today. They've established the Matteo and Carlo Foundation, dedicated to supporting families dealing with pediatric terminal illnesses. Their mission statement reads, "Death is not the end of love. It's love's transformation into eternity." And I finally understand the full scope of Carlo's miracle. Just as he had used his programming skills to document Eucharistic miracles and share them with the world, he orchestrated this encounter from heaven to document the miracle of death itself, to prove that consciousness transcends physical expiration and that love truly does conquer death. Today, at age 58, after witnessing over 2,800 deaths in my nursing career, I can testify with absolute certainty Carlo Acutis didn't die on October 12th, 2006. He graduated to a larger life, where he continues his mission of showing the world that supernatural love is the fundamental reality underlying all existence. Those 3 minutes I spent holding his hand weren't the end of an extraordinary life. They were the beginning of an eternal mission that continues to transform despair into hope, one broken family at a time. And if this channel has been an answer for you, consider leaving a super thanks. This financial help, however small it may seem, sustains this mission and allows us to continue bringing deep and transformative content to more lives that need this word.